Thanks again for coming to the Chasey Partners webinar on the challenges and approaches to scaling your automation journey to an enterprise-wide level. I'd just like to introduce myself as Lee Knowles. I look after marketing for Chasey Partners. I'm joined by my colleague, Melissa Acosta, who looks after operations. She'll also be looking after the slides and the polling questions that we do in the background. Just to get the formalities over as quickly as possible, this is a listen-only webinar. We do, of course, encourage you to ask as many questions as you can. At the bottom of your screens, there should be a hand up function or a Q&A box. Please ask us as many questions as you can, and we will try our best to answer each and every single one of them. We are also going to try and save a little bit of time at the end of the webinar just to answer any of the questions that we missed or any new questions that any of you would like to ask us. I mentioned some polling questions. There will be 2 polling questions in our webinar. They'll be very obvious when they start, because on your screen a large QR code will appear. All you need to do is just pick up your mobile phone device and use the camera function button and to open up your camera lens and point that at the QR code, and that will generate a screen which will show you the question and then the various answers available for you to personally choose. There's no right or wrong answer. So it's just a great way for us to engage with where you are in your RPA scaling journey. That's about it. Just before I introduce our 2 expert Chasey Partners speakers to you, I just wanted to set the scene a little bit and mention that we are currently in the 4th industrial revolution, where RPA is a massive part of that. It's actually the fastest growing enterprise software category in the market at the moment. And of course, that creates a mindset that everybody else is doing it, so I better get on board and start as well. And which is absolutely fantastic. A lot of our clients that we work with are exactly on that part of their RPA journey with us, and they are reaping the benefits. But of course, it's a little bit limited in its scope, because there is an opportunity to kind of leverage on the biggest benefits you get, which is by leveraging your RPA, upscaling it to hyper automation levels. I guess the obvious obstacles or questions which come up when you are trying to achieve this is, who is going to decide on that? Who's going to manage the process? Does the company have the skill set, or is it set up to actually implement an RPA program? And the biggest finger pointing question is, what if something goes wrong? Where is the blame going to lie? Well, I have some good news for you. Is the people who we're going to blame in this instance are our 2 speakers. Just to introduce them, we have Mr. Chewy Mitchell. He is our global head of RPA. So in regards to all those big decisions that needs to be made, Chewy is the main man that we go to. He has 20 years experience in shared services. He was a director of global business services, where he led an RPA program using UiPath software. And alongside him, we have Mr. Jim Jameson, who is the Chasey Partners RPA delivery manager. He has 30 years experience in business transformation and change management. He has been a technical director for a company where he led the global change management process, as well as tooling their technical division. On behalf of Chewy, Mitchell, and Jim Jameson, Chasey Partners, and everybody who is attending the webinar, I would just like to say that get your popcorn ready. Let's make the webinar awesome. Ask as many questions as you would like, and let's clear away any doubts you have in regards to scaling your RPA program. That's everything from my side. I'd just like to hand you over to Mr. Chewy Mitchell.
Thanks, Lee. And hello, everyone. Happy to be here and excited to share with you for the next 60 minutes. As Lee mentioned, we're going to have a couple of polling questions just so we get into the interactive mode. So said that, let's start with Chase, right? Who's Chasey? So if we turn to the next slide, please, Melissa. Just a little bit of overview, right? Headquartered in the United States, founded over 15 years ago. We are a global firm, and a global firm that is focused on consulting and advisory services. Just a couple of years ago, as Lee mentioned, I was the director of global business services for Herbalife. So just like me, many of our leaders in the organization are practitioners. We like to see ourselves as practitioners, really hands-on, bringing a unique expertise, right, and a blend of real life, practical, and hands-on experience. And that's what we use, right? We always aim to empower our clients to reach world-class delivery through shared services and through business transformation. From a client, we have, right, over the years, just as we learned and how to transform delivery, we've added RPA. We first started thinking about RPA over 6 years ago. We created the division, I guess, 4 to 5 years ago. And it's kind of just following the trend, right? And hearing from clients. We are a firm that is focused on clients all the time. And hearing from clients the need to continue this evolution and journey of transformation. And as Lee mentioned, RPA is becoming a core pillar of transformation in shared services and back offices. Moving from a client perspective, we have clients all over the world. As I mentioned, over 15 years, we've been helping clients to implement successful service delivery solutions. United States, Canada, Latin America, Europe, Middle East, and Asia. We help both the public sector and the private sector to achieve operational excellence and delivery of mission-critical business services, both shared services, global business services. Client-centric, we have an approach that is tailored to what clients really need, and trying to enable them to reach what they want to reach. They want to reach regional support functions. Do they want to become global? Are they seeking to transform their back office, or are they seeking to integrate the back office in different service locations around the world? So we always think about what clients need. You can see the clients here, right, all over the world, across all the industries, through retail, financial services, manufacturing, higher education. And of course, by understanding pain points operationally of what it takes to deliver shared services, we've been able to enable, right? We've been able to focus on enablement through transition into shared service, but also helping clients through RPA and artificial intelligence to transform the way shared services operate. Moving to the next chart, Lee mentioned the fourth industrial revolution, right? So I'm going to touch a little bit more on what do we mean and what is this fourth industrial revolution. It's here. First of all, it's here, right? And what it is the combination of technologies, converging technologies, such as artificial intelligence, robotics process automation, RPA, Internet of Things, genetic engineering, quantum computing, and many more, right? And what makes the fourth industrial revolution slightly different is speed, right? So the speed of current breakthroughs has no historical precedence. So if you compare to previous industrial revolutions, this fourth evolution is evolving in an exponential manner rather than in a linear pace. And it's disruptive, right? It's disrupting almost every industry in every country all over the world. As you know, fourth industrial revolution is changing how we work, how we live, how we communicate, is reshaping governments, is reshaping education, healthcare, commerce, almost every aspect of our lives. And when I think about, right, the possibilities of billions of people connected through mobile devices with, with unprecedented processing power, storage capacity, access to knowledge, this is unlimited. These possibilities are multiplied. And when you think about what I mentioned, artificial intelligence, robotics, Internet of Things, vehicles that are autonomous, 3D printing, So it's all over us, right? It's all over us. And you know, RPA, moving to the next chart, please. I thought we were in the next chart. So yeah, I was mentioning the difference between, you know, the different industrial revolutions, and what in the middle of the fourth one, right? And you know, think about it as very fast and exponential growth of how we spread knowledge, the number of new automations that we're delivering, the number of, you know, artificial intelligence projects we're leading, and focusing more on RPA and what RPA it means for organizations. I'm gonna turn it over to Jim so he can walk you through what's happening, right, all over the world with RPA.
Hi everyone, and thanks for joining today. Thanks, Chewy. What a great lead in. Obviously, RPA has been growing steadily for the last 4 or 5 years, and it's really becoming a driving force for enterprise-wide digital transformation. However, with the onset of the global pandemic that we've all been living through, RPA's really vaulted into the limelight as companies figure out how to work differently, how to work more efficiently. On the screen, you have some Blue Prism 2020 global survey results, and just like to go through a few of those. It's impressive that 90% of the decision makers now believe RPA is important to drive digital transformation. 78% recognize that RPA is a solution to a global productivity problem, while 81% believe RPA and automation offers more than just time and cost savings, right? They're thinking of things like increased customer satisfaction, data integrity, data compliance, and almost 95% plan to extend the use of RPA or some type of automation across their organization. Surprisingly, however, 83% believe employees are open to incorporating digital workers into their daily activities. So as you can see by the chart and by the numbers displayed there, RPA technology is definitely on the radar of decision makers in companies worldwide. Next slide, please.
So what we'd like you to answer for us today, and we're gonna try to make some sort of a dialogue and discussion here, is if you can describe in a word, right? You can type as many words as you'd like, but what is the biggest impact, right, after pandemic or within the pandemic of your existing RPA programs? So we're gonna display now the QR code. Turn on your photo function, just like this, right? You can point to the QR code. It's gonna display for you a link. And then by opening that link, you'll be directed to the polling question, and you can start just typing. We're gonna give it another minute. So Jim, how would you describe, right, with, you know, the projects we're delivering right now? As if I recall it correctly, most of our projects over the last 18 years have been fully remote, right? Delivering RPA projects, but by talking to clients, what have you heard, right, on what's the impact to resources, what the impact to budget, and so forth? What are you hearing from clients, Jim?
Yeah, there's no doubt that the pandemic has caused people to try to figure out how to do work differently. You know, we were fortunate, we being the Chasey partners, we were already predominantly remote, right? We would go to clients as needed. So when the pandemic hit, we didn't really have to figure out how to work differently because we were already used to it. But all of our clients it really put a strain on resources, not just on people, but on infrastructure, because quite honestly, companies weren't prepared. They may have offered, work from home days and things like that, but to suddenly go from, say, 3,000 people working from home on a given day to now you've got 11 or 15,000 people. I mean, that takes a big impact on your infrastructure, on your bandwidth. So that's really where people struggle the most. And then of course it's now, instead of being in an office where you're, seeing your teammates and working, now you're all separated, right? So it makes things a little harder to communicate. So I would say those were the biggest impacts to the workforce on the pandemic.
Also, I think, Jen, I don't know if you would agree, employees and workers are starting to lose fear, right? This remote work kind of accelerated the need for automation. So we have at least a couple of clients that have told us that they had no budget before, right, for RPA. They had been trying to push RPA for years and they were not successful at getting traction. And right within the pandemic, there was some sort of an acceleration of the need for automation that created a roadmap, right? A faster, a bigger roadmap for these couple of accounts. But I'm also hearing that employees, right, and workers, they're starting to lose fear on how to interact, right, with automations and bots in their daily jobs. So I think that there's positive and there's negative on how this had its impact resources in organizations in both shared services, global business services, right, and across industries.
Yeah, absolutely true.
Okay, why don't we keep moving?
So research has really indicated that 40% of a person's time is spent working on mundane manual tasks. So that brings to question what really can be automated through RPA. And so let's just take on the screen, you see some of the criteria, if you will, that make a process a good candidate for our RPA. Anything that is highly manual, repetitive in nature, rules-based, low exception rates. In other words, it doesn't take a human to make a decision. We're not talking about if then else type of structure where a bot may click this button and look at this screen and then click another button. I mean, that's all if then else type logic, but really where it would really require a human to make a thoughtful decision. Anything that has electronic input, high volume of transactions. Obviously, it's probably not worth the time to go through an automation if it's something you perform once a year and it takes 5 minutes. I think that's probably goes without saying. And then, of course, stable and mature processes that don't change a whole lot, and the environment or the infrastructure in which they execute on is very stable, don't have a lot of changes. It's important to remember, though, that not all good ideas are actually good automations in production. And as you'll see later in the presentation, process assessment really sets the foundation for a successful RPA program. And that's true not only when you're first starting out, but also if you need to kind of a reset in your journey. Maybe your journey stalled a little bit. There's a way to get back on track with that. Next slide, please. So I know you've heard the term earlier about hyper automation, and so what really is hyper automation? And really, it's just a mix of different tools, right? Automation technology, business analytics, artificial intelligence. These help humans. It really augments humans' ability to process information and and it's completed in either a hyper automation, semi-automated, or an autonomous way. However, before we be embarking on any type of automation initiative, companies and company leaders need to understand which technologies solve what type of problem, right? Because not one tool fixes all the problems. As you've heard, RPA is good for robotic, automated rules, task-oriented processes, but they're not capable of learning and improving on their own. Unlike artificial intelligence, where they're great for learning, dealing with large volumes of data, and when they're used with RPA, you can automate more processes with better accuracy and speed. However, unlike business process management, you can seamlessly connect dots and enable effective orchestration between many different processes and between many different types of automation software and bots. And really the bottom line is that one technology won't solve all the challenges, but really a more holistic approach is actually the best approach. Next slide, please. So as we said, RPA kind of lays the groundwork. It's kind of the driving force when companies first get started. RPA is there to help set the foundation and move the company forward. And then as you mature and your capabilities expand, hyper automation can grow organically, but you really need strategic planning to ensure that the foundation and capabilities are there and they're understood. And this is kind of where you define your roles and you develop your talent and in order to support RPA and other automation capabilities as you move forward. So that brings the point, right, Jim? What's that?
Back to the point on people, right? So when we were asking the question about impact in RPA, pandemic, resources was the word that resonated, right? So there are impacts to how workers and employees operate today, but also roles are shaping, right? So in the plan now, watch now, it's not only about technologies, it's also about how daily work is changing and how roles are changing and how more and more this digital mindset and this automation mindset, it's taking a place in each and every organization. So individuals that in the past used to have non-automation related roles, by being integrated or being part of a project, they're changing their mindset and even their own roles are changing through time.
Well, and that's true, because you do have transferable skills, and the one I like to use as an example is, let's say you're a business analyst, and as an organization becomes more RPA or has a different mindset, you start to think about, okay, how can automation help me in a particular process? And so a good transformation is from business analyst to RPA business analyst, as an example. It really does happen organically once you build the momentum. At your first step, it really can help build an organization's capabilities. And so that brings the question, really, what does a successful transformation look like? And it's inevitable that change is always going to happen. Process efficiencies are always going to be in the works, right? But when you more or less arrive, automation is at the very core, right, of your organization's capabilities. A digital assistant or a digital worker may exist for everyone. You may have desktop automations that you run on a daily basis to help you with some of your mundane tasks, and then there may be enterprise bots that run overnight to create reports and generate information or do data entry, that as a human, when you come back in, all you're doing is checking to make sure that the robot ran correctly, the reports generated, they were sent, whatever the case might be. And of course, you have also citizen development. You know, I myself have a bot that I run on a monthly basis. It's just for me, but it helps save me, you know, 20, 30, maybe 40 minutes at the end of the month to do certain book work that I need.
And that means a lot, Jim. If you or I are able to create a bot, a simple automation ourselves, it means like most likely everyone else can.
anyone can do it. What are you trying to tell me to? But yeah, but from an organization standpoint, I'm just going to throw, you know, a little word of caution. Citizen development is great, right? You want to encourage citizen development because it really changes that mindset. But as you mature in your space, and we're going to talk about centers of excellence here in a little bit, but as you mature and you grow, your citizen development also should have some type of formal approval process. So we're just not out there creating bots that kind of go, I'm not going to say they go crazy, but do things that maybe are not in line with your organization. Next slide, please. So, not in any particular order, what are some of the lessons learned or best practices that we've learned along the way? Number one on my list is really about getting the key stakeholders and decision makers engaged. Now, the thing that I want to really point out is that many times you may not have 100% approval. At least maybe 4 or 5 years ago, it may be different now, but with the polling that we just saw. But the point is that some decision makers may not be 100% on board, but they're going to you know, wait and see what happens. And so often a proof of concept or a pilot really helps not only localized teams to adopt RPA or automation, but it also really provides decision makers a glimpse into what the possibilities are. And you know, quite honestly, typically that's centered around, okay, what's my return on an investment? We've had clients that we've done a pilot, quite honestly, rather simple pilot, but it saved them so much money that, you know, we've now, you know, got a pipeline that's going to be starting real soon that before they didn't even believe they were going to do RPA. They just wanted to put their toe in the water and see what it do for them. So really a proof of concept or a pilot can really go a long way in helping drive home, you know, what the capabilities are organizationally. Second is, you know, transformation is not just about automating a manual process. In fact, more times than not, a process needs to be streamlined and maybe pieces eliminated in order to support or accommodate automation. So it's not, again, it's just not about automating and forgetting about it. And although a concept, or excuse me, a proof of concept or a pilot is a typical starting point, what you really want to do to gain momentum is to, as you're doing your pilot, you really need to be doing an assessment of, you know, as many processes as you can, 5, 10, 15 processes. If you can do an assessment and you can build a pipeline and get a real feel for what automation could do for you, that really helps provide momentum organizations need to get started. And fourth point that I wanted to make is that just clearly aligning what your objectives are and expectations for your automation program. And that's just not with stakeholders and with decision makers, but it's really about everyone across the board, so they understand what it is and what it isn't and what it's going to do for them. The fifth, and certainly not like I said, and not in any particular order, really get IT involved early, right? When you get IT involved and give them an understanding what it is you're trying to accomplish, it really helps IT understand the security requirements, and really, if they understand the plan going forward and they can get on board early, then they have a better understanding of how they're going to manage that digital workforce as it grows. And last but not least is just selecting the right software vendor. I know that there are times that, you know, if you want to just dip your toe in the water, and like our client I was talking about earlier, it's okay to go attended. If you want to go attended, you're not really ready to open up that enterprise solution right off the bat. But honestly, you can dip your toe in the water, do some attended bots, but make sure that the vendor is able to support both attended and unattended. So you wouldn't want to go one way and then have to completely reverse track and go another way just to have an enterprise solution. So that becomes very important. And of course, you know, all the maintenance requirements and upgrades and available training is also very important in terms of selecting the right vendor. So anyway, that concludes our lessons learned. I'll turn it back over to Chewy now.
See, Jim, I was going to ask you a question. Do you think that a center of excellence is needed to launch an RPA program?
It's not. In fact, many of our, well, I say many, I'd say it's probably 50% of our clients don't have a center of excellence when they first start, but it does become necessary as if you're going to scale and you're going to mature, for sure.
Thank you, Jim. You almost finished my section. So,
sorry.
Center of excellence. No. So if not needed, why bother about centers of excellence? And centers of excellence are really the launch platform to scale RPA, to scale automation, and to start adding technological components, new skills, and new process to really become a center of excellence of hyper automation. So when I think about center of excellence, I always try to remind myself what a center of excellence is not. First of all, it shouldn't and it's not a bureaucratic office, but rather it's an agile. And even though we keep repeating agile and agile, your organization, when forming a center of excellence, needs to be agile. Agile central governed body that is going to provide services in the form of automation that are going to provide advice, that are going to give standards and deliver standards across the entire life cycle of any given automation. Second thought that I always try to keep in mind is COE, it's not a group of people developing RPA. We tend to confuse centers of excellence with developers. It is a combination. Your center of excellence is a combination of people, process, and technology, empowering and helping others within the organization to accelerate the time to value, right? Picking the right processes, following standards, reusing assets is going to help organizations to realize time to value faster. And also through time, being able to incorporate other emerging technologies like machine learning. Last but not least, a COE, it's not an isolated group of technical people. You need to have built within your center of excellence process and business skills. So then with the combination of business and process and technology skills, you become as a team a core component of the digital transformation of your enterprise, right? You must become a center of excellence, an evangelist, and a catalyst for automation. Moving to the next chart. So as we said, right, as we said, hyper automation is here. And as you create centers of excellence, as you design your center of excellence and put it into production, you need to be thinking about future technologies. You need to be thinking about how your COE can really become this central governed body that is going to run automation projects across the organization. As I mentioned, needs to be a lean team, small team, almost flat organization. Very important that your COE is very close to the business. So setting up a COE that is isolated and is only thinking about ROI and is only thinking about how to set the right priorities, but is not really connected to the pain points and to the people and to the operation, most likely is going to be a COE that at some point in time stalls, right? And is not able to grow any further. So being close to the business is very important. It's not about understanding the technicality, but also gaining this deep process expertise. And as I mentioned, a real focus on asset reutilization. So for each and any given new automation, you don't need to start from scratch, but rather from your inventory of automations and modules within the automations, you can reuse through time. And again, going back to the time to value statement, by reusing RPA assets, you really can accelerate the cycle time of any new automation projects. End-to-end is very important, right? From discovery through documentation, making sure that you follow standard documentation from a process standpoint, like your PDD, from a solution design point of view, like your SDD, making sure that you always have your handbook, your testing tracker, that you have a way to explain in simple words what the bot is doing, and then making sure that you move it with the right standards together with IT into a production environment. Last but not least, right, once bots are in production, how do you support bots, right? How do you support bots? How do you make sure that you monitor them, that you have the right tools, the right processes, and the right people to monitor, to maintain, and to support? And on the top of it, there's one very important layer, right? Which is, how do you get more ideas? How do you use crowdsourcing, right, as a mechanism to really engage with the organization? And going back to not becoming a technical COE, but having business skills and being close to the business, that's the only way you're going to start you're going to create a virtuous cycle. Being close to the business, being able to grab new ideas from the business, and also empower and engage with larger organizations so they can start sending new ideas, proposing new ideas to the COE for future automations.
I got a quick question for you. Quick question. So just, and we can do this while everyone's answering this, I guess, but just in your opinion, should COEs or RPA programs be initiated by IT, or should they be initiated by the business?
That's the $1 million question, Jim. And we're going to talk to that later in the presentation, but I think the most successful programs I've seen, it's triggered by the business, but with a very close partnership with IT.
Right. Yeah. That would be true for me as well.
So I know that you guys must be sleeping by now, but wake up a little bit and then turn on your mobile, your cell phones. We're gonna use the QR again. We're gonna try to answer from a governing body perspective. In your experience with your clients or within your organization, who's responsible for launching, managing, and scaling your RPA and intelligent automation programs? QR. The QR is going to open a link for you. And then once the link is open, please. It's gonna, when you open the poll application, it's gonna give you the options on how these programs are led within the organization. So yeah, feel free to answer, please. So Jim, now that we're just bouncing back and forth questions, that based on what you're seeing here from the audience, does it surprise you?
A little bit, yeah. And I think majority, I always thought a majority of people thought IT or business, but not a hybrid, right? And we always tell people to get their IT department involved early, right? So there's no surprises down the road. But the fact that 50% of our polling believes that it's a hybrid, yeah, that's impressive.
Yeah, and we're gonna get into operating models, Jim, right? I think
Right.
when we talk about operating models, we're gonna touch a little bit on the different options, right? No option is perfect, right? So thanks for answering, guys. I mean, I really agree that a standalone either business or IT program without the partnership with the business, if it's led by IT, or without the partnership with IT when led by the business, is gonna lead to failure, right? So this, I think the key question for all of us here is, how do you combine forces, right? And how do you combine forces and set up the right governing structure for your organization? And as I said, there's no one size fits all at the end. So moving to operating models, I think is important. And as I said, right, when you think about organization, you need to think about an agile team, right? You really need to think about that COEs are not necessarily adding layers of organization or bureaucracy to the process, or even headcounts. It's really reusing existing skills in the organization and reshaping those skills, right? So they become COE-like skills. And you need to formalize it, you need to retrain, you need to repurpose, but think about utilizing existing resources and utilizing existing knowledge within the organization. As we always said, right, RPA jobs are not for IT professionals. The trend we're seeing, as you mentioned, is that business analysts, process SMEs, continuous improvement leaders, among other roles, now have the capabilities to evolve towards RPA. Even think about development, right? We always say business analysts over and over, but many of the developers that we know, even within Chasey, they don't have an IT background. They may have some engineering background, right? But they don't necessarily have to have an IT background. Remember, RPA is low code. So some technical roles, of course, you're gonna need infrastructure engineers and other individuals within IT, right? Helping to enable the infrastructure, helping to set up the environments. But when you really come to the design and implementation of your COE, it's always gonna be a combination of business and IT skills. Now let's jump into operating models. Okay,
There we go.
I'm just listing 3 here, right? But when you think about this, and when you read through this, and when you think about your future center of excellence, you don't need to stick with each one of them. Hybrid is going to be one of the models that I'm going to talk about, but even there could be hybrid with hybrid. So there are many possible combinations. And this is a very interesting debate, right? What we are seeing is that more than 1/3 of the companies have built COEs in the business unit, but also with a central IT team within the CIO office. Per this chart, there are 3 different types of COE operating models, and none is perfect. The good news is there are process frameworks and there are tools to evaluate what operating model fits the needs of an organization. So don't think about, I need to pick one because this is the one I think I like. I'm gonna pick one because my boss wants me to pick that one. Think about that there are frameworks and tools and methodologies to get to the right answer. Therefore, right, selecting one COE model, right, it's not the end of the game, because this is an ever-evolving game, right? So you can pick one model and then through time start shifting to a new model. So central, right? Let's talk about central models. This is by far the most traditional one. IT loves, right? IT loves the central model of work because it really keeps a tight end-to-end control and ensures that standards are followed at all times. What we're seeing in the industry is that this model is used by nearly 20% of the company. So 1 out of 5 companies selected decentralized setup. But the other trend that we're seeing that this is a decreasing model. This is not the preferred one as companies start evolving and continue to evolve their RPA programs, because there's always this perception, right, that the COEs that are centrals, they are far from the business. Now, on the other hand, right, there's decentralization, so kind of the federated way of operating. This is the preferred model by business units because it gives them freedom, right? They don't have to compete with each other for priorities. They don't have to be competing even outside their organization for priorities. From a discovery standpoint, right, this is when it becomes very interesting. From a discovery standpoint, this is a very good model. Since it is built within the organization, it is built within the business unit, you get access to the real expertise within the function. So discovery becomes very, very, very fast. But on the other hand, right, there are disadvantages to it. If you have COEs across each and every function, they could end up selecting different RPA vendors. They could end up setting different standards. They could end up setting different, documentation mechanisms for automations. And at the end, it can become a mess, right? So that's why hybrid, with these 50% responses that we saw from you, hybrid seems to start positioning as the most popular one. So what we're seeing is that more than 40% of the organization have adopted this model. This model, you can hit it also as co-federated. And according to our research, this model seems to have a direct correlation with the level of adoption of RPA across the enterprise. You get faster at triggering pilots, right? You can also enable citizen development. And it's all about coming to an agreement on roles and responsibilities at the top. So kind of your controlling COE sets the policy, sets the standards, sets the software vendors, and then you disaggregate the delivery capabilities in smaller COEs, very, very close to the business. There are many variants to this model, by the way, right? There are many, many variants to the model. But at the end of the day, right, it's how do you combine this central set of policies and standards with the ability to deliver faster automations sooner and being able to reuse assets, right, from this central COE and then retraining through this central COE to your satellites COEs built within the functions, right? So the last comment that I would make about operating models is if you pick one, right, you can always through time evolve it and move it to hybrid, right? It's if you select going decentralized or central, there's always the option through time to redesign and to reshape your COE and move to what hybrid means for you within your organization. Next chart. Now, COEs, right? COEs really need to be the, as I said, right, evangelists and catalysts of automation, and change management and change managers within COEs is a critical role. So let me turn it over to James so he can just make us think, right, and make us ask ourselves why change management is a critical success factor for successful RPA programs.
Thanks, Chuy, and great explanation. The COEs, that was very informative. In terms of change management, there's really two types of change management, right? You have organizational change and you have IT change management. And so really so what's the difference? And honestly, the lines can get a little blurred at times because they both deal with risk, right? The risk you have of not communicating and a transformation idea or project, and then also the risk that a change to technology that goes awry. So really any big IT related change, like a system upgrade, needs a communication plan, just like an organizational change, always communicating, and then potential training, right? Whether it's a change to a process or to a tooling that is used by IT or other parts of the business and organization. So the lines can get a little blurred at times. And really communication and focusing how work gets done is really what organizational change is all about, right? There needs to be a collaboration at times, as I've said, between your business and your IT to understand the impacts, training, support, policy perspectives, and again, just communicating to the key concepts to employees and to help with acceptance and adoption. And then, of course, IT change management is really about focusing on the governance and compliance of technology changes. And just let me say that RPA is not exempt from compliance standards. As you heard in Chewy's presentation on centers of excellence, that's where you really get into your standards and your development requirements, your documentation, and that's where you gain your consistency for RPA. But it's not like RPA is different. I will say that RPA is a little different. And if you've watched any of our previous RPA episodes that you and I have put on, you've heard us say that sometimes you do need to change your change management. What was typical, and I'm talking about your IT service management part of change management. Sometimes you may want to change your processes to accommodate RPA. And I know that as it's defined in your ITIL for change management or problem incident knowledge, whatever, that sometimes those are frameworks and those can be very strict, but you may want to reconsider how you implement RPA changes into your change or how you use your change management process for that. But again, it's not exempt. And in fact, as your RPA program matures and it's more streamlined, it becomes even more important for you to focus on your changes to your or implementation of your RPA program or programs, but also your changes to the underlying applications, right? Whether it be web browsers or ERP systems. Changes to those systems can impact your automation. So it becomes very important that you have transparency for all of them together. Next slide.
I love what you said, Jim. Change your change management. Important. If you want to really scale your RPA program, change your change management. Even back to the operating model, a proper and successful change management program from your COE and within your COE must have IT, human resources, and business unit considerations.
Right, no doubt. And you know, we've got this slide here, and really the takeaway that I want to really emphasize here is we've talked about stakeholder, you know, identification. It becomes important on how you communicate with those stakeholders and decision makers, how much, and it can depend on how much influence they might have in terms of how successful the operation or your program will be. And we've heard the term that a successful business depends on location. And obviously from the slide there, you can see that the 3 C's stand for communication, consultation, and collaboration. But in my opinion, communication is one of the most important but often overlooked aspects of a new RPA initiative. And why is that? And that's because when people hear about transformation or automation, you know, the one of the things they think about is, oh, I'm going to lose my job, or what's in it for me, or how does this affect me? That's really what everyone wants to know. And so it's imperative that we get, employees engaged early to help them understand what RPA is, what it's not, how it may impact them. And really it's about the exciting opportunities to lay ahead for themselves and the organization as you take on this automation journey.
And let's wrap up. There's only one last chart. I think that the closing remarks I'd like to make, first of all, thank you guys, right, for bearing with us, with Jim and I, for the last 57 minutes. If we move to the next chart, just to wrap up, Meli, please. When you think about RPA, you have to think about it end-to-end. You have to think about process assessments. You have to think about how do you take baby steps through pilots and through proof of concepts. We talked about center of excellence. Center of excellence is not a must to launch an RPA program, but becomes increasingly important if you really want to scale. Creating an agile bot development practice within your organization. And last but not least, making sure that bots in production, they are healthy, right? They are doing what they're supposed to be doing. Don't forget about adding business intelligence layers on the top of your RPA program so you can monitor bot performance at all times. And keep in mind, right, it goes back to the basics, right? It goes back, you need to start RPA. RPA is here now. If you want to scale, COE becomes increasingly important, and you are not alone, right? There are vendors, right? There are many options out there, right? And of course, Chasey is one of them. So thank you all, right? It was great having this conversation with you, Jim. Thanks for the participation. See you soon, right? We're gonna share it with all of you, the presentation materials later on, but feel free to reach out to Jim or I at any point in time.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.